Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Joe Szymanski. He is Palmer Johnson. We are back. It's Onward to Victory, the one-stop shop for all George Mason basketball. Season 3, Episode 2. Palmer, how are you feeling on this fine Saturday afternoon? We're getting ever so close to opening day on November 3rd.
They announced the open practice, so we're not that far away.
Yeah, we're not that far away. Just announced as we're recording today. Just announced the first open practice of the year, October 4th, in conjunction with the Mason Mile that they've been running for a couple years now. It's being done just both for students and for the general public. So go out early morning on October 4th, go run, walk a mile, potentially win a couple raffle prizes, and then go watch the open practice and team scrimmage. So that should be a good time there for all those in the area. But Palmer, for the last episode, we talked about potentially looking at the team previews for the year. This year, we're focusing a heck of a lot more on recruiting for 2026. It's kind of come alive in these last couple months. Let's start off with, I think, the one that a lot of people are talking about. I think maybe the main man on Mason's target list. Let's talk about the 6'8" forward from Mount Zion and now at Hargrave Military Academy in Southern Virginia, Shane Pendergrass, the 4-star.
This is the big one. He's kind of been, I think he took 2 visits last summer and taking one more this summer as well. So they've been on him for a while. It's nice to see that they've been on this guy for a while and he hasn't blown up, because normally when Mason's early on a guy like Amari Witherspoon, it's like, oh, they're early. Oh, and then somebody swoops in and is like, oh, well. But, I mean, his top 6 is Louisiana Tech, LaSalle, Duquesne, Cal, Boise State, and Mason. Mason can win that. It isn't like Pitt coming in and like Pitt saying, that's our top recruit, where it's like, well, we can't do anything about that. Mason, this is very attainable.
Absolutely. That's a big deal here. I mean, Mason can absolutely win this. By the way, folks, by 247's composite recruiting rankings, Pendergrass would be the second highest recruit in Mason history by the most recent numbers, I believe. He's at he's like 9.537 or something like that. He's just a little below Eric Copes, I think. I think it's a recently changed thing. He's a little bit higher than I think someone came in and put him down a little bit. But he was at a 9.6. I think he's at a 9.95 now, but he's still a very well-regarded recruit by a lot of recruiting sites. This is, a really talented 6'8" forward, and like Palmer said, this is someone that Tony Skinn and co have basically had on their minds since day one of this staff coming in here. This is kind of the position that Mason's looking at right now, too, Palmer. I mean, you've got not maybe necessarily a whole lot of positional depth at the 4, at least in terms of a true 4 past Nola Adebayo. It seems like Mason is going to be trying out Emmanuel Kanga in that position in terms of a backup this year. He seems to be able to kind of fit that mold there. But I think in terms of what Mason has liked to do at the 4 position, it seems like the long arm Pendergrass might be the better option to an extent.
Yeah, because he's more of a, Kanga's more of a big 4, kind of like 4-5, and I would consider more of a 5-4, but 4-5. You could play. He could be your center. And Pendergrass is much more of a wing 4, kind of like a definitely more forwardy than Woody Newton. Whereas like you play 3 with 4, definitely more forwardy than Woody Newton. But you get what I'm saying. Like this is more of a true forward, not a big man.
Yeah, not really a guy who want to play at center either. If you want to make sense of what Palmer's saying, kind of like with Woody. Woody certainly had the height in theory to play center, but we had to play 2 years ago. We had to play Woody at center for a game and a half because Amari Kelly got suspended for stomping on a man's head, and Malik Henry was indisposed. So we had to do the Woody experiment. Do you remember that, Palmer, for a game and a half when we had to play Woody at center?
I do remember that. I remember he played decently well. I do remember everybody was like, man, I wish Pavretti didn't show up or didn't leave.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Nico Pavret, what a name. What a pull from Palmer, remembering Pavret. But he was not the only one to visit last weekend, Palmer. Mason got another visit too. Peyton Miller A true point guard out of sweet Georgia, I believe. I believe that information is correct. Yeah, he plays with Overtime Elite in Atlanta out of sweet Georgia. A 6'3 guard. He has officials visit set up with not just us, but also Rhode Island and our Potomac area rivals in Maryland. He shared visit time with Pendergrass. We saw photos of them both there. I think my favorite thing about those photos, Palmer, the best thing about when you're co-champions is that you get to give your recruits a chance with trophy time. I like trophy pictures, Palmer. I think that's a good thing for recruits to see because we haven't seen that in a long time. George Mason be able to give our recruits some trophies, show them off the trophy case a little bit. We've got them now.
Totally agree. I like the trophy. Because I remember last year I was like, man, every transfer guy that was going to Duquesne, they all had pictures with that trophy. I'm like, yeah, I would do this too. I would milk that trophy as much as I could.
Yep. So what do you think about Miller here? Like I said, 6'3 guard, kind of it seems like leaning towards point guard position. That's a positive. I mean, we're talking about A10 size. That might be a little bit above A10 size at the point guard position at 6'3.
Yeah, I mean, if he's actually 6'3", Okoji was 6'3", but then Memphis had him at 6'1", so he's probably not 6'3". I think he looks pretty big for I believe that's accurate. That's big. I mean, that's big point guard size for the A10. And he's not slow. I think he's pretty fast. I think he's kind of smooth, not flying away from anybody, but it's like, oh, but he's getting exactly where he needs to go. Efficient routes. I really like how he can stop. I don't think he starts too quickly, but I think he stops really quickly. Which is pretty important.
That's important. That's important. And that's another thing. Mason, again, doesn't really have – I mean, Isaiah Skin was kind of the point guard brought in this year, but with the loss of Justin Begg to the transfer portal, that might be a position of youth that Mason is looking towards. Obviously, Corey Mincy, in theory, has another year of Jordan Mason if he decides to stay after this season. He's a junior this year, so he would have another season. But, Mason, obviously, I think, certainly looking towards the point guard position for the 2026 class, especially – I think with Begg leaving, that seemed to certainly open the doors for this class a little bit. It seemed to be leaning towards more of a wing-focused class, I think. And then once Begg left, it seemed like there was an understanding that a point guard needed to come in as well. With that in mind, Miller, again, like I said, they've been targeting the Atlanta area. The Atlanta area, not just now with transfers. Katie Johnson last year, Corey Mincy this year has a lot of ties to the Atlanta area. Just kind of the South in general. And now we've got recruits coming in from this area, Palmer. Is that an interesting maybe change of strategy than a lot of former Mason coaches, it seems, really to be targeting the Atlanta area to an extent?
I mean, there's a lot of talent there. I mean, they have Overtime Elite there, which is why Miller's down there. I mean, it's a pretty good. I mean, Peach Jam is there. Like, there's just a lot of basketball there. So honestly, it's probably one of those things. They probably go down there for Peach Jam, then it's like, let's visit these guys while we're here.
Yeah, that's important, Palmer. Absolutely big, important thing there for both of these teams, for all of these teams now, the Atlanta area increasingly becoming a true hotbed for talent. But we can't be ignoring the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. That's what this weekend's visit comes to. Let's talk about the other point guard visiting recently. Let's talk about Jayan Chapman, the 6'1 true point guard out of New Jersey. He plays for a New York City-based AAU team. He's a Mason official visit along with Northeastern, Hofstra, GW, Rhody, and Boston College. Again, that seems like we talk about winnable lists. That seems like a winnable list right there for George Mason. He's a 4-star on 247, but he's a composite in terms of the whole thing. Talk about Chapman. Talk about what he can bring to the team as well.
So I talked about Miller. He's not super. The first step isn't crazy. I think Chapman's first step is really good. And he could just be one of those guys who comes in and is just kind of like Begg, where it's like, oh, he's just going to beat his man off the drive. He's just going to beat his man and drive and kick. Of course, Begg was a little too small. I like Begg, but he was too small to really take him into the driving kick because it's kind of like, if they didn't let him kick, then it's like, oh, you're 5'10". It's not too hard to defend you. Chapman's 6'1", and I think he's a kind of a bigger 6'1". Yeah, this could be a big time guy. When Pendergrass had his original top 9, GW was on there, and that was the only school I was scared of. And GW is on Chapman's top 6, uh, which is kind of the only school I'm really worried about because you know Rhodey Archie may not be there when Chapman would be at Rhodey, so I don't really have much, not really worried too much about that. And that's kind of like it's Hofstra, that's Northeastern, 2 CAA teams, and the Boston colleges, whatever they are.
Who also, by the way, whose coach could also get fired, by
That's
the way,
true.
this year? Errol Grant is not necessarily in a safe position himself. So you've got probably, like you said, outside of GW, the next two most worrying ones on that list are probably Rhodey and BC. And they're probably getting, and those coaches are, let's say, probably above a 50% chance of not being there next year. So potentially another Mason VGW situation to watch there, which could be really interesting. I mean, we've had these battles before here, Palmer. I mean, we talked about Jalen Ruggiero this past recruiting cycle. That looked like one Mason maybe could have gotten, but he decided to stay he's from DC, decided to stay in DC with Coach Caputo over there in the Revolutionaries. You talk about Emmanuel Kanga. There were some rumors that GW was looking around at him. Mason, in the end, comes out on top in a pretty big way for Kanga. As both programs start to build in terms of competitiveness and ability, and as it seems, we've talked about this before, inner workings, Palmer, but we never really know if change is going to happen in the recruiting system in this country. But it seems like it has, as transfers and getting these older guys have become more important to the best teams. Outside of really these top, 20, 30, recruits in the country, who those are the kids who could be getting NBA time and could be getting NBA looks and could be fit right into these P5 schools right away. A lot of these kids, once you get below, maybe not 30, but once you get below the 60, 65 ranking, you're starting to see a lot more of these kids look towards those lower P5s and these high-level mid-majors. You talk about VCU, who's gotten 2 top 25, 2 top 100 2026 commitments in the last month. I mean, I know that's VCU, the money that's there, and what that program has done. But it seems to be a sign of the changing times that you're seeing a lot of these well-regarded, well-ranked players. The lists that are coming out and that you're seeing from these kids are taking mid-majors into effect a lot more.
Yeah, I think it's happening a lot more. As you said, the playing time is more available down in the mid majors, and of course the problem becomes, as soon as this guy's good, they're just swooping in and taking him. So it's just, I see why they're okay with letting the guys go down to the mid majors because, if he's good, then we'll have him in a couple of years. If he's not good, he'll still be there. It's like, it's just it's a vicious cycle that, as you might guess, it'll always benefit the guys with the big money.
Yeah, absolutely. Sadly, but I think it also speaks to the idea of what betting on yourself now does. Because if you fail at the upper level, I mean, let's talk about a guy, Jathan Lamoth, who was a well-regarded prospect who ended up going to Maryland 2 years ago. Didn't get any playing time and has now been stuck, I think, at NCAA, A&T, and now I think staying in the CAA with UNC Wilmington. Obviously, that's an upgrade within the. Let's not be wrong. That is a very, very clear upgrade in the CAA from going from NCAA to UNC Wilmington. Let's be very clear. That's still a definite upgrade. But this is a guy, we've seen these players who bet on themselves by going to these P5 schools and flaming, maybe, not getting playing time and then flaming out. And then they lose a year of basketball or two. And then they transfer down to try and see if they can get back up, and it still doesn't work out for them. And, I think more and more you see as, kind of inner workings, and we'll call them NIL agents. These agents that you see come in now, I think, are recognizing that unless you are truly one of the best that comes out of these classes, if you're not encouraged of staying on the bench for potentially a season or two, in a world where they're just getting inconsistent playmakers, especially in these high levels, schools like George Mason could be able to capitalize on that for the very least a season or two of these players. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
I agree. I mean, it just makes more sense to, as you said, bet on yourself as well. there's two ways that betting on yourself could be. Hey, they think I can't play there. I know I could play down here and get a payday next year. Next year. But yeah, I think it makes a lot more sense for guys to go down to the mid majors, make a lot. Put up, produce a lot, and then go up, because that's what happened with the Kennesaw State guy. I remember Mason was in on
Oh,
him,
Adrian Woolley. Adrian
Avery
Woolley.
Woolley, and just like that, I have a feeling that guy could have gone somewhere better than Kennesaw State, but he went to Kennesaw State and averaged. It wasn't 20, but it wasn't far from 20.
It was
It is
like
official.
19 and a half points a game. And he, like, I think Kennesaw was like preseason on KenPom was like 180 or something like that. And then he nearly took him to the tournament because they got to like the semifinals, I think, of the CUSA or something like that. I think they lost to Liberty in the end. But he like totally raised the level of that Kennesaw State team by himself. And now he's probably going to be a starting guard for Alabama this upcoming year. Like it just starts to make sense for these players. And we have one more 2026 player to talk about this year. Let's talk about Donovan Williams, another big point guard, 6'3" point guard from Oak Hill. He's already had visits to Texas State. Duke. He's got visits to Texas State, who, by the way, is joining the newly formed Pac-12. I think next year, along with the kicking back off next year of the Pac-12. Our friends in the A10 and Duquesne, Florida State. We talk about those kind of lower level P5s. I know it's weird to talk about Florida State as a low level P5, but in basketball, they certainly have been, at least since the turn of the decade. As well as us at George Mason. He's a 4-star on ESPN. He's currently unranked on 247. But we did just see, and I don't think either of us knew this before we saw the tweet come out, Palmer, but assistant coach Lou Hinnett took an in-home visit to go see Donovan Williams at his home, which I don't think, like I said, I don't think either of us thought existed anymore at this point, but apparently it does.
Yeah, I just kind of assumed that was the thing of the past where Coach K sitting in your living room. I just kind of assumed now is like, okay, here's how much we can pay you. Here's how much you'll play. That's kind of, we'll see. We'll go to your basketball game and say that, not, go into your house and getting to know this family,
It feels old school in a way, in a good way, let's be clear, but old school in a way. But Donovan Williams, talk to me about this. Again, another pretty tall-sized point guard that could be a key player here for Mason in the 26th class.
I think, as you said, big. I think that's a really good. He's 6'3", which is big for a point guard, especially the A10. I think that's a good sign of kind of a future trend because, Braden O'Connor was a 6'4" point guard, and they worked pretty well. Whether he should have been playing point guard or not. Well, obviously, they finished with a share the A10 title, so clearly it worked. But whether that's his natural position, the size really helped, and it's just kind of like one of those things where Skin might be thinking like, I should be going after these 6'3" guys. Because at the very least they're not going to be a liability on defense like we've seen in the past where this guy's pretty good, but he's 5'10". So if he's not an offensive juggernaut, then
what's he doing here?
Yeah, it's like, oh, he's just kind of being a liability. I think having the size is really important. Just not somebody who can reasonably guard up one position, and it's not a problem.
Yeah. It does seem to be something that works a lot in Tony Skin's Patriot pressure system, where there is a lot of switching off of ball screens to an extent, and there's kind of that position ability there where you're going to have to be able to move off of one guy off these ball screens to keep the ball pressure on. Tony certainly seemed to like that with Braden a lot. The fact that Braden could guard a 2 or even maybe an undersized 3, I wouldn't say ease, but with ability to do so. He had the ability to do so and to get in those positions. That's certainly something that I think Tony likes a lot of those point guards. Now, Corey Mincy is 6'1", totally fine for point guard size. But if he isn't perfect on defense, then he certainly has, though, I think more than any other point guard that we've seen so far at Mason, he has the, all-around offensive tools to make it worth it for him, maybe to have a shortcoming or two on defense compared to, if he's, scoring 15 points a game and assisting, I had to get a 6 assist a game. I don't care if maybe he misses an assignment once every while. He's getting us a consistent 15 and 6. Maybe you do. Maybe you will, Palmer. I know I sure won't in that regards. But yeah, it really is just kind of following this path. We're seeing bigger guards for George Mason. We're seeing these long-armed wings as well for George Mason. It seems to be that he's looking for people that he found from his transfer portal. He's looking for those type of attributes, physical attributes in freshmen that he was able to find in the portal. He talked about Woody Newton, not just as a player, but in terms of his long arms as well. He talked about how Woody was able to use his, long arm length as an advantage. And he talked about Woody hands a lot on defense, how he was able to get his arms all the way. Obviously, I'm not able to do that. I'm I'm 5'9" barely, so I don't have that, of course. But Woody, with his wingspan, was able to get up there. And Tony Skin is clearly looking for players who can do that. And it seems like, again, Donovan Williams is another kid who could fit that possibility. It's a really, it's interesting to see. You're seeing this pattern emerge, though. He likes over 6 foot guards, at 6 foot point guards. He likes wings who have long wingspans. That's what he's looking for in these players, and I think it certainly sells that he's building, that he's got a system, and he's finding players to work in that system. And that's exactly what I want a coach to do. You're not just looking to, find a diamond in a rough every once in a while, which I think, when you have a coach who can find those diamonds in the rough every once in a while, that's great. But when that's all you're depending on, it feels like you have a problem. We think we had that in the past, and we don't right now. So it's working out really well for us, obviously. Finally, one more. We're going to shift to the 2027 class for a little bit. We got an unofficial visit. We talk about another one of those long-armed wings, Daniel Abbas, 2027 unofficial visit coming on the 11th of October, a 6'7" forward out of DeMatha. He's got a lot of standout lists. He's got an offer from Mason and St. Joe's, and I believe not the current Maryland staff, at least the former Maryland staff, it seems like. Talk about this. Well, I can't believe it. We're talking about a kid in 2027. This is a upcoming junior this year. Hasn't even played his junior year basketball yet. So talk about what we saw in his sophomore year, I guess, Palmer. Isn't that wild to say?
From what I saw, he moves pretty well, and he's a really good play finisher, which if, this guy's, 15, 16, that's pretty – can't ask for much more from, a guy who's going to be 2 years younger than a lot of guys playing with. So it's kind of like, if he's a good role player right now, that's pretty good. And yeah, I mean, people really like. I know he was on as we pointed out, he was on when I was looking up stuff for him, his name popped up on a ton of standout lists for the Victory Junior All-American Camp, and so that's I think that's, it's nice to see that there's a camp and people really like him. We didn't watch that camp, but some guys that I trust, PD Webb, I trust, the guys like that I trust. And yeah, I mean, a St. Joe's unofficial visit, that's, well, actually, I don't know.
Is it important anymore?
Well, yeah, I mean, since they kept it since they hired in-house, I would say it's still pretty important. So that's true. But yeah, so I mean, that's
wild. We'll get to that commentary, I think, after we finish there. But again, I just talked about it. We talked about Tony looking for people who fit a mold. Long-armed wings. Daniel Abbas kind of, again, fits in that mold. We're just looking for these guys with long wingspans. Again, Daniel Abbas fits in that mold. Again, 2 years away. We have no idea how he's going to come out, what he might explode to or what he might not explode to. But he's clearly a talented player. He got a lot of people's attention this summer. And he's a local kid. He's a DeMatha kid. Those are the type of players that you want to try and convince to come home here. That's a big deal for George Mason. That's a big deal for this team, is to get those local attributes and to get those type of players to stay around here, hang out in Northern Virginia, and be close to their families. That's a selling point for George Mason. And Tony Skin's going to keep harping on that point, and I think until he's not here anymore. So it's a big deal for us. It's a big deal for this program. When even to get those guys in the building, it's huge, and it's huge for this. I think the plan that Tony still has regarding recruiting is to try and get kids from this area to stay home.
I mean, you kind of have to. I mean, there's so much talent in the area, and so many guys that are going to get a Power Fives and then might need to drop down a level. You've got to use that as a selling point.
Yep.
If there's any non-monetary selling point you can have, you have to use it.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And like you said, it's not just for when they're recruiting now. It's now talking about, hey, if this guy doesn't work out here, we have that inbuilt connection with him. Can he come back to us. It's this type of stuff like that. Like you talked about Amari Witherspoon. If Amari Witherspoon, for whatever reason, doesn't work out or decides doesn't have a good sophomore season, why would he not come back to George Mason, right? Or at least be connected to us. Why wouldn't that potentially work out? So it's all these interesting things here that will there. But that's kind of our recruiting update. But Palmer, we did have one huge thing of A10 news this week. Maybe the most shocking news out of the A10 this whole offseason so far. Maybe it shouldn't be shocking news, but it's certainly shocking in the way that it happened. Palmer, you and me have harped on St. Joe's basically from day one when we started doing this together. And the continued keeping of Billy Lang as head coach. Well, Billy Lang is no longer the head coach at St. Joe's. Talk about your reaction to that, Palmer.
I'm shocked. I'm not shocked that it happened. I'm shocked when it happened. Because every year has always been the year. It's been, this is the year. If they don't make some noise this year, this is it. And every single year he would do exactly how much he needed to keep his job for. Well, what about next year? Maybe next year. And then, we both know if they kept Billy Lang, then he would have finished as the fifth or sixth seed and have been like, oh, but next year that's it. And I think they just realized. Well, okay, so reportedly he left on his own.
Palmer doesn't believe that. Palmer is a Billy Lang truther.
I think that he did not leave on his own because they reportedly signed the interim to a 4-year deal already. It's kind of like, if you weren't planning this for more than a week, then you would not have been able to hammer out this 4-year deal so fast.
No, that's the thing, right? That's the interesting thing. That's maybe the bigger criticism from Joe's. It's not the fact that Billy Lang left 60 days before a season starts. It's the fact that you give the job off to your what was supposed to be your new associate head coach in Steve Donahue, who just got by the way, did not just have his contract not re-renewed, but was outright fired at the University of Pennsylvania. Which, again, to be clear, it is very hard to be fired at an Ivy League school job. Steve Donahue did bad enough in his last 2 seasons at Penn to get fired from the Penn job. I think he had a total of 9 wins last season as coach of the University of Penn. So to give him 4 years, I think we would have joked a lot here, but a lot of people would have been an upgrade over Billy Lang. And I'm going to be one to go on the record to say I don't know if Steve Donahue is at this point. I don't know if I believe that. So to St. Joe's fans, I say good luck. This might not work out very well for you all. Maybe it will. Maybe maybe your AD is a genius and Steve Donahue just wasn't. Maybe just Penn has too many borders now and just won't work there anymore to be able to recruit talent there. But yeah, what a fascinating thing to see happen. We already have the first head coaching change, and it's not even played a game yet. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, I think the conspiracy theory is that my conspiracy theory is that this was planned from the start, and that they were going to use Billy Lang to build this team because that was Billy Lang's strength. He builds pretty good teams, but then when they have to play basketball, it's like, oh no, we can't play basketball very well. So maybe they are like, well, Billy, you can build this team, and we'll get a guy who, maybe we think he draws up better X's and O's than you, but just can't really build teams because. He had some really good Cornell teams a while back when in a different
long time ago.
So maybe they're thinking like, well, maybe he can bring that Cornell magic back once the team is already built for him. Now, of course, if you're going to do that, I wouldn't give him a 4-year deal because I'm not a big believer.
10 last year.
Yeah.
No, it is a true thing, but I think the question around Billy is how much did he build this year because. Eric Reynolds and Rasheer Fleming both graduated / left for the NBA, and Xavier Brown and his uncle left for Oklahoma. So, I don't know if they really replaced. I know Eric Reynolds wasn't actually that good last year, but did they replace X and Rasheer Fleming? I'm not really I like Anthony Finkley. I think Justice Adjabara is a good defensive center. Maybe Desir Haskins takes a big step forward, but maybe who's that transfer they got? Was it Glover to them? Is that the guy?
St. John's guy.
St. John's guy who they think is going to be the key piece here, but there's a lot more what ifs with this Joe's team than there's been in the last 2 years, arguably, because you don't have Eric Reynolds, and you don't have Rasheer Fleming, and you don't have X Brown now. So, like, I don't know. I just don't feel like it's going to work out. I don't think Steve Donahue is a good coach anymore. He certainly was a decade and a half ago. Like you said, you saw with what he was able to do with Cornell in the 2000s. But I just don't see it anymore. It's hard for me to see it anymore, and if Joe's isn't that good, then that brings up a lot of questions about how the league's going to look this year in terms of standings-wise. Does that kind of cripple what was turning out to be an interesting middle of the pack this year if St. Joe's doesn't turn out any good? But that is for the actual playing of basketball to the side, which we are less than 6 weeks away, Palmer. We're less than 6 weeks away from college basketball being back, and we're going to be right here with you all year on the Onward to Victory podcast. I'm Joe Szymanski. He's Palmer Johnson. Thanks for listening today, as always. It's so good to be back. Follow us here on the new YouTube channel, Onward to Victory Giant Killer, because we are part of the Giant Killer brand. You want to follow us online at social media at Giant Killer as well. Thank you all for listening or watching from wherever you are, and go green and gold.